our Bloom Queen is having her rerun along with Navia, and finally, our baby girl Kaveh in the first phase of version 4.8. And it's copium time, because I will not be pulling for Nilou, although I said it before, but I'm actually saving for Emily this time. Hi, this is Earlbedo. In this video, join me in creating a Bloom substitute for Nilou and Kaveh. I already created a Barbara Bloom video before, but this time, I will give you F2P and premium options to build Bloom and a more detailed guide so you can try it too. I do have Kaveh, but we will focus on characters, specifically Barbara and Kokomi, who do not have Bloom as part of their kit because I love challenges. Also, not everyone has Kaveh yet since he has been locked up by Hoyoverse for so long. Plus, this is just an excuse not to use Kaveh because I'm too lazy to build him. Let's first talk about how Bloom works. To trigger a Bloom reaction, you mainly need two elements, Dendro and Hydro. That's it. A Dendro core will be created once you apply Hydro to a Dendro inflicted enemy or vice versa. Only 5 Dendro cores can exist simultaneously. After 6 seconds, these seeds will explode, or if the maximum number has been reached, or if a character has certain mechanics like Kaveh and Nilou where they allow Dendro cores to burst immediately. Just beware that Dendro cores can inflict damage on your active character. Its individual damage is very small, but if you're not careful, your active character might die. Bloom is a transformative reaction, which means in its simplest form, the damage produced by these reactions are reliant on character's level and EM alone. Unless the character's talents or constellations like Sito Nahida, Bajo, Nilou, and Kaveh buff it directly. Basically, its damage is very similar to Overload. Here's the damage calculation. It's important to know that character level is as important as EM, since the Bloom damage increases by at least 30% if you level your character from 80 to 90. That's huge! So it's important to invest in your character's level when trying Bloom. Aside from character's level, EM, kits, and talents, other mechanics such as Zhongli's Resistance Shred can increase Bloom damage. Another great mechanic of Bloom is it helps trigger another layer of very strong reactions, namely Hyper Bloom when Electro is applied to Dendro cores, or Burgeon when Pyro is otherwise applied. Now, why is Bloom not as widely used as other reactions such as Hyper Bloom? This is because Hyper Bloom has been in the meta for a while now due to the fact that it's very easy to use and build, while being able to annihilate the Spiral Abyss due to its massive damage. So why use Bloom, which damage is inferior than of Hyper Bloom, if you can just add another off-field Electro like Kuki Shinobu or maybe Raiden Shogun without leveling up their talents, right? Because of this, new niche characters have been introduced to us, namely Nilou and Baby Girl. Nilou was able to put Bloom on the same level as Hyper Bloom. She is able to buff Bloom damage by a lot in a non-traditional way since her buff is based on her HP instead of EM. This mechanic is what makes her different and fun to use. Kaveh also does the same but with different scaling. But let's focus on Nilou. Nilou is undeniably the best Bloom 5-star unit as of now, since aside from buffing Dendro Core's explosion, she can instantly burst the Dendro Cores while also buffing EM of the team, which means more damage. But it comes with a caveat. For Nilou's Dendro Core's damage and EM buff to work, there is a very specific condition. You can only use Dendro and Hydro to the team, otherwise the buff won't work. This is understandable since allowing other characters like Sucrose and Diona who can greatly increase EM of the team, or maybe Zhongli who can provide resistance shred that can directly buff Dendro Core's damage, can cause imbalance in the game. Of course, another thing to consider when getting her is, are you really sure that you want a very niche team to work with? That is why in this video, we will try to create a Bloom team without Nilou and Kaveh to see if not pulling for them while creating your own Bloom team is worth it. In this section, I will provide an F2P option and premium 5-star options for you. Obviously, we will use a Hydro character. In this case, the F2P option is Barbara and the premium option is Kokomi. Both of them are great since they are both Catalyst users, which means they are both very good in applying Hydro for consistent Dendro Cores creation. However, Kokomi might be a little better since her skill is technically unlimited and this applies Hydro every tick. During my testing, I find Kokomi easier to use, but that's not to say Barbara is not a good choice. You will see later that they essentially deal the exact same damage since again, Bloom scales with EM and level. When creating a bloom team, I highly recommend to use only one Hydro since having 2 or more means building that character in full EM and max level 2, which means more resources used. And having 2 Hydro might also result in a small DPS loss since you're giving a slot that could have been taken by another support. If you want to maximize bloom damage, the best artifact to use is Paradise Lost, since the 2-piece set gives EM while the 4-piece effect boosts bloom damage by a lot. I will show you the difference during the showcase. If you do not have it, just slap 2 2-piece EM to them. The main stat should be full EM, with HP substat for healing and ER for their burst. Ultimately, the goal is 1000 EM. Make sure to not use a Dendro damage goblet or 2-piece effect as Dendro damage bonus because this does not increase bloom damage. You should use an EM catalyst obviously. ER and HP weapons could be okay but they are not really the priority for bloom teams. The next slot should of course be for a Dendro character for Dendro application. The top pick for this is Nahida. She is the best Dendro applicator, battery, and EM buffer. And she can do it all while being off-field. The FTP options for Dendro are actually very good. Dendro MC is a great choice since they are basically a 4-star Nahida. Cola is also free with decent Dendro application. You can insert another Dendro whose role is to heal or shield as well as to activate Dendro Resonance to provide more EM. The top option is Baiju since aside from his pseudo shield and constant healing, he also buffs Dendro related reactions by a lot. He is also great to pair with Nahida since he does not really apply Dendro too much, which means you can focus on stacking HP on him instead of EM. Yao Yao and Kirara are the FTP options, which again are very viable. Basically, almost all Dendro units are very useful and strong, even the 4-stars so far. For all the Dendro mentioned above, you should have at least one of them wear Deepwood Memories. This is basically the Viridescent Venerer set for Dendro reactions. Take note that the main Dendro application should have at least as much EM as Kokomi or Barbara since they can also create the Dendro cores. The last slot should be reserved for buffers and debuffers, or crowd control if needed. Zhongli is one of the top choices here. He provides a very reliable shield while also shredding enemies' resistance. Another 5-star support that is great for Bloom teams is Kazuha. Although C0 Kazuha does not directly buff Bloom, he can be a great crowd control unit. Furthermore, Animo characters can actually take ownership of the Bloom reaction while swirling Hydro. That means if the Animo unit swirl the Hydro aura and this hits a Dendro affected enemy, the Bloom core damage will actually be based on the Animo's EM and level. So make sure to max out your Animo's level and EM too. The more FTP friendly non-Dendro and non-Hydro supports are Sucrose and Diona. Sucrose is actually better than C0 Kazuha since she can provide EM to the team. Although her burst and crowd control is inferior to Kazuha, her EM boosting capability makes her shine. Surprisingly, Diona works well with Bloom teams for 3 reasons. First, CRYO actually helps in making more Dendro cores. This is because Dendro and Cryo auras can coexist in the enemy since they don't interact with each other. When Hydro is applied, it will first interact with Cryo, which will then reduce the gauge level before it interacts with Dendro, creating more cores. In short, if you only have Hydro and Dendro, you will create less Dendro cores than if you have a Cryo unit in the team. Second reason is because of her shield, which helps in keeping you alive with self-inflicting core damage. Lastly, if you have C6 Diona, she can actually grant you a lot of EM. So in summary, here is how an FTP Bloom team should look like. And here's how a more premium team should be. Of course, feel free to mix and match, but I find 1 Hydro, 2 Dendro, and a flex slot for support very efficient. Before we continue, if you are enjoying this video, please subscribe to my channel because I make Genshin Impact guides like this almost every week. Now, enough talking. Let's see our Bloom teams in action. Let us first try a no buff Bloom while wearing 2 2-piece EM first, so we can have a reference on how we started. you will see why lots of players don't use Bloom. The damage is not the best, but it's definitely more than Hazo's normal attacks, right? You will also see that it's a little hard to use Barbaros, so let's try Kokomi with the same stats. Here, Kokomi has a little more Hydra application, that's why the course explodes faster, but the difference is not that big. Now, let's apply all that we learned earlier and put it to test. Let us now equip the Paradise Lost. There's a 10% difference per Dendro course. This might look small, but take note that there are several Dendro cores exploding simultaneously. This time, let's complete the team and see the difference.
I see everything. The Temple of Wisdom.
Stabilize. Taking a turn for the better.
The Dactylus. Let's dance.
There is a huge difference, especially with Baizhu and Zhongli. From 22,000 earlier, we reached 32,000 per explosion. That's around 160,000 per set of Dendro cores. I'm impressed. Although the damage is AoE, I'm still having a hard time when enemies are small and not together. So let's try it with Kazuha and with Kokomi for easier Hydro application.
Mind the side effects. Seems like an emergency.
The damage is a little lower without Zhongli, but I cleared the enemies much faster since I was able to group them and all of them took all the explosion. Now, enjoy some more Bloom Showcase.
Amuse me. Surrender is a valid option. I promise I'll be gentle. Comes first.
Allow me. Rest and rebuild.
Not bad.
Make yourselves a room. I see everything.
You are not welcome. Mind the side effects. Seems like an emergency.
Let's dance.
One with nature.
La, 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 la. I'm getting it. I'll protect us.
Bloom might not be the strongest reaction and it's harder to execute if you don't have dedicated Bloom units. In reality, it's good for quick multiple enemies, but if you're trying to defeat bosses or maybe clear the Spiral Abyss without dedicating Bloom units, it's kinda hard. So if you just want to try something new and if you want to have fun, I recommend trying a Bloom team. But if your game is meta, just go get Nilou. How about you? Would you try a Bloom team without Nilou and Kaveh? Comment below. Again, this is Earlbedo. See you next time!